Yeah, here we are down in the lower field. You see some of the summer crops that we have down here, including, these melons on plastic.
I was going to ask, you're an organic farm, correct?
Yep.
What does that mean?
Well, there's this USDA definition, and then there's kind of organic methods, right? For 7 years, we were a certified organic farm. That is, every single year, we had an inspector out that made sure that we were following the correct organic practices as laid out by USDA's rules, right? So as opposed to synthetic fertilizers, we're going to use natural fertilizers like blood meal and a bone meal. Instead of using an herbicide, we're using other kind of cultural practices to deal with weeds, whether it's hand hoeing or mechanical cultivation, or things like this plastic mulch, or this, we're using this black plastic essentially as a plastic mulch to hold down weeds. So right now we're actually not certified. We haven't been certified the last 2 years. That's something I gave up during the pandemic. It's super important if you're, say, wholesaling, but considering that I direct market everything, everybody kind of learns about my practices, how I grow, and they kind of hear that from the horse's mouth, if you will.
So then, how about if you have insect or disease problems? What are the things that you do to help with that?
Well, again, a lot of it comes down to cultural practices. Like in terms of disease issues, the number one way anybody can deal with disease issues before they sort of, reach for a fungicide, I guess in organic method, you would say, is there anything you need to do first, right? Sometimes we're quick to reach for an input. Something like early blight, right? I mean, we get early blight every single year. It's manageable. It's more manageable if we buy seed that is more resistant to blight. It's also more manageable if we're consistently doing a rotation and we're rotating families. So those are like cultural practices that we do on an organic farm. But also, I mean, early blight comes for tomatoes for me every single year. At some point, you just ask yourself, is this going to affect the fruit or not? And oftentimes early blight isn't. I mean, it makes the plant look a little bit ugly, but if the fruit is set and then blight comes on, no big deal. So some of it just sort of like, may not rushing to judgment, if you will. Let the plants do what they're supposed to do. The big thing about organic production is if you have a strong soil and you feed that plant well, it's just going to be a stronger plant. And it's just going to be less susceptible to some of these disease issues, pest issues, insect issues. There's only one insect that we actually use an input on, and those are Colorado potato bugs. So we use a spinosad on Colorado potato beetles, but other than that, I don't spray for anything.
What are some of your common summer crops that you include?
Yeah, I mean, the whole mix of things. I think one thing with being a CSA operation, we do about 30 different crops, right? Between cool season, spring, fall crops, and then, I don't know, pretty much any summer crop you could think of, right? We're standing by the melons, we do peppers, tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. Our main crop of onions is back in this field. You also have things, traditional cucumbers, as well as some specialty cucumbers, things like that.
So what are your fall crops that you finish up with?
Yeah, like I said, we were talking a bit about the greens, right? I mean, a lot of people, I think, suffer, say, with spring spinach. For example, this year, I didn't even try to do spring spinach. I'm only doing spinach in the fall. Performs way better in the fall. Salad mix performs better in the fall. Certainly we do a fall brassica, all the, kohlrabi and broccoli and cauliflower, things like that do great in the fall.
How late in the season do you keep on harvesting and delivering?
Yeah, we'll go all the way into October. So in terms of the CSA, we'll deliver the kind of the beginning of October. And then we do start to wind it down a little bit. Although we will harvest as late as mid-December in high tunnels. We'll do kind of a hot season, kind of cherry tomato crop or tomato crop in a high tunnel. September we turn that over to greens, salad mix, spinach, things like that, and we'll harvest those as late as mid-December.
So then, what do you do in the fall with all of this area to take care of?
I mean, we do put some of it to a cover crop. Although it's often really kind of hard in a commercial vegetable production situation, simply because it's really only those things that are coming out as, as early as September that you can really get a cover crop established on, right? Once we're getting into October, things will germinate, it's getting cold, it's kind of difficult to get something going. I mean, for the most part in October, I'm like super tired and, so I limp along and try to, pull up the mulches and clean up the fields as best I can and, just try to put it to bed for the year, if you will.
If you're like every other gardener, do you have trouble with deer and rabbits getting after your crop?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, every gardener has like kind of the big pest problem, right? Here on the farm, we don't have like a deer fence or anything. Some commercial places will put in a big, tall deer fence to kind of separate the garden from the deer, if you will. The only thing I've got are two very enthusiastic dogs. I've never really had much of a rabbit problem. Here and there we get some deer coming through. We're here in Lakes Country. It's very wooded. There are a lot of deer around.
Well, thank you so much for letting us come out and learn about CSA and what it is and how you do things. If you were to give advice to somebody that wanted to start a CSA, what would you say?
Yeah, I think my best advice is start with the farmer's market, right? The proving ground, the stepping stone in terms of going commercial, if you will. The greatest place to start is a farmer's market. It gives you that chance to kind of build your skills, make sure you're putting out a kind of a consistently good product, and you also get this good customer interaction. And so you learn are my carrots up to snuff or not? Well, you're gonna hear about it. Are they gonna get sold on the table or not? And I think from there, you get good feedback, you get your skills up, then you're in a good place in order to do a CSA well.